open the box. I came.
In my pants. It's perfectly normal, nothing wrong with me, but we're going to need a cleanup on aisle 3.
Okay. Seriously, that needs to change. Okay. So let's take a quick look at the PTB and Pinhead and get a better idea about what we might expect on his release. I'm going to assume you've already seen one of the dozens of videos reading all of the perks and all of the power text verbatim while showing you what his Mori looks like. So now I don't have to waste your time and mine going over it all over again as if I'm doing something new and unique.
Space Coconut.
Okay, so first we need to remember that the version of Cenobite that exists on the PTB is already outdated by a week, so some bugs and other adjustments have probably already been taken care of. His power to summon chains is interesting. At first I thought it was a waste of time to control it like Victor, but giving survivors the chance to react brings something interesting to an already stale chase meta that the game hinges on. What I don't like is how unreliable they are when you connect. It seems like a chain will connect and hold a survivor while the bar at the bottom automatically struggles for you. We can assume that this works like the Trapper and Pig Trap, that a random number is chosen, and when the system selects that number it will break the chain, retrying on a failed roll. If the chains aren't working how they're supposed to and they're supposed to do something different, I'm not sure, then the alternative is that each chain has a different duration, determined when it connects, and it'll break when the bar fills up. I'm not a fan of this kind of RNG determining how effective a power is. Another problem arises with the duration that a survivor is held back compared to the time it takes Pinhead to recover from a connecting chain and move around obstacles to capitalize on a chained survivor. If Pinhead can't really gain ground on a survivor, then obviously his chase potential will be reduced, especially since he's a slower killer. It would seem that this mechanic in particular has potential to be about as strong as Clown Bottles or Freddy's Snares, just with more flair. They'll probably make these slightly more effective, but not by much because they're already borderline useful as they are. Moving on, it would seem like survivors are periodically tormented by chains. I'm not entirely clear on what they do other than disrupt survivors randomly. Again, we have RNG slowdown that may or may not be useful, and the survivors can stop this from happening by using the box. I'm not a fan of survivors controlling an aspect of the killer's power, but this effect might be inconsequential anyway, like Freddy's sleep mechanic and alarms, so it doesn't really matter either way. He can't track down the box himself, but if he stumbles across it and uses it, he can get the locations of the survivors around the map. Again, it's just a quirk of the licensed character that they just shoehorned into the game. We can't say for sure if he's weak or strong, simply because he's new, the RNG involved, and the fact that he'll probably change by release, so we'll just have to wait and see what he looks like then before we cheer now. In regards to his perks, Deadlock might be a decent perk if you build around it and RNG is on your side. The killer has no control over the perk like Bitter Murmur, and as a result, will require a very specific setup to be useful. In the end, I don't think it does enough to warrant a spot on a killer's loadout, if they actually want to slow generator progression effectively. Hex Plaything, besides being a hex perk, gives Survivor Oblivious until the hex is cleansed, but only the hexed survivor can cleanse the totem for the first 90 seconds after it activates. This only activates if a dull totem can be found on the map, so RNG and survivor luck will play a part in the effectiveness of this perk, on top of how quickly the killer can hook a survivor to activate it. How long will a survivor be hooked? The longer they stay on the hook, the less time they need to wait to cleanse the totem, or for another survivor to cleanse the totem, and the less they have to even worry about having the Oblivious status effect in the first place. I think the devs were trying something new with this hex perk, and it is certainly new, but I don't think it's going to see much use thanks to the Oblivious status effect itself, not to mention the dull totem requirement, especially since survivors cleanse dull totems out of fear of NOED anyway. I could be wrong, I've seen some people like this perk, but bleh. Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain, is extremely interesting because of how the perk is named. We don't have any official word as far as I know, but this might be a new type of perk. It would make sense that killers would see a new perk type, since survivors will be seeing the introduction of boon perks soon. The effect is interesting in itself because it hits an unhooked survivor with Sloppy Butcher, but tacks on a lasting effect once they're healed that ends when they're injured again. The nature of this perk is exactly what Cleansing Hexes should have been. Remove a detrimental effect for a price. It only happens once per match for each survivor, so it shouldn't be too overwhelming, until a killer decides to use Thana and other anti-healing perks to make it less desirable to not heal after the first hook to avoid the penalty. But aside from the new perk, imagine Scourge Hook Gift of Lethargy that hits them with the exhaustion status effect, or Gift of Sight that hits them with blindness, or maybe a combination of old or new effects. Hooks hitting survivors with a penalty after a hook rescue and healing afterwards is a wonderful thing, and I really hope we see more of these Scourge perks, because this is exactly what Hexes should have been. I'm expecting Monstrous Shrine to be turned into a Scourge perk once they decide to rework it, and I really hope that it's good. In all, the devs have actually done a great job with this PTB Hellraiser DLC. Bugs and glitches are expected, but the base of the character has a good foundation that only needs small adjustments to make it work well for both sides. I don't know what the devs will do, but it really shouldn't be difficult. A decent killer that needs minor tweaks to be good, one bad perk, one iffy perk, and one interesting perk that could introduce more. They actually did a good job this time. It's still just another chasing killer that does the same thing that other killers already do, but it may actually be worth the price tag this time. Of course, don't buy it on day one. Wait and see what changes they make to the killer before you buy it, because this is behavior after all, and they have a history of making small adjustments that absolutely dumpster a killer before they're forced to give it a complete overhaul. I guess we'll see what they do, especially in the future with Scourge perks. Until then, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.